I woke up to fluorescent lights burning into my retinas and the sharp smell of hospital disinfectant mixing with something metallic, my own blood, I realized later. My head was pounding. Everything felt distant, like I was underwater. But I could hear him clearly. Of course I could hear Marcus. "Please, you have to help her." His voice cracked with what anyone else would have called desperation. She collapsed. 1 minute we were talking, the next she was on the floor. I think she hit her head on the counter. She's always been so clumsy. I keep telling her to slow down, but she never listens. I tried to focus my eyes. The ceiling tiles swam above me. I was on a gurney, that much I understood. Cold air on my skin. A blood pressure cuff squeezing my arm. Voices overlapping, nurses, maybe a doctor. And Marcus, standing over me, his face the perfect mask of a terrified husband. "Baby, can you hear me?" He leaned in close, his hand finding mine. To anyone watching, it looked tender, but his fingers dug into my palm hard enough that I felt my bones shift. His eyes weren't wet with tears, they were sharp, cold, watching me like a hawk watches a mouse it's already caught. "Don't you dare," those eyes said. "Don't you fucking dare." I tried to speak, but my tongue felt thick. My jaw ached. Had he hit me there? I couldn't remember. The last few hours were a blur of his shouting, the sound of glass breaking, my own voice begging him to stop. "Please just stop." "Ma'am?" A young nurse appeared in my field of vision, her face concerned. She had kind eyes. "Ma'am, can you tell me your name?" Amelia, I managed. My voice came out hoarse, broken. "Amelia, that's good. Do you know where you are?" "Hospital." The word felt heavy in my mouth. Marcus squeezed my hand again, harder this time. "Honey, you scared me so bad. I thought I lost you." His voice was thick with emotion that wasn't real. 12 years of marriage. And I could read him like a book he'd forced me to memorize. Every false note. Every calculated pause. The nurse was looking at me strangely. Her eyes traveled down my arms, where I knew the bruises were, some fresh from today, others yellowing, fading into my skin like watercolors. My neck probably had finger marks. There might be blood in my hair from where he'd grabbed me, slammed me against the kitchen wall before everything went black. A doctor pushed through the curtain, an older woman with gray hair pulled back tight, glasses perched on her nose. She had the look of someone who'd seen everything twice. "Mr. Miller, we need to examine your wife. If you could step outside for just a moment." "I'm not leaving her." Marcus's voice went hard for just a second before he caught himself, softened it. I need to be here." "She needs me." The doctor's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. Something passed across her face. Recognition, maybe. Or suspicion. "It's protocol, sir. Just 5 minutes." Marcus stood frozen, his jaw working. I could see him calculating, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. "Of course, whatever she needs." He bent down, kissed my forehead, the spot where I knew a bruise was forming. His lips felt like ice. "I'll be right outside, baby." Right outside. When he left, the air in the room changed. I could breathe again. The doctor moved to my side, her hands gentle as she examined my face, my neck. She didn't say anything at first, just looked. The nurse stood nearby, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes said everything. "We know. We see it." "Amelia," the doctor said quietly, pulling a penlight from her pocket. "I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need you to be honest with me. Can you do that?" I nodded, barely. "How did you get these injuries?" My mouth opened, closed. In my head, I could see Marcus waiting outside, probably charming the staff, playing the devoted husband worried sick about his clumsy, fragile wife. I could see him pacing, checking his watch, making sure I didn't have too much time alone with anyone who might ask the wrong questions. Or the right ones. I heard myself say. The words tasted like ash. Like he said, "I'm clumsy." The doctor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Disappointment? No understanding. She'd heard this before. From other women. Other wives. Other survivors playing the role of victim so well they'd almost convinced themselves. She leaned in closer, so close I could smell her coffee breath, and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "Blink twice if he did this to you." Time stopped. Such a simple thing. 2 blinks, that's all it would take. 2 blinks and they'd call someone. Security, maybe. Police. They'd make him leave. They'd keep me safe. But for how long? I could feel Marcus through the wall, could sense him hovering just beyond the curtain. If I blinked twice, what happened when I went home? Because I always went home. That's what women like me did. We went home. The doctor waited. The nurse waited. I could hear Marcus's voice outside, already spinning the narrative to whoever would listen. She works too hard, doesn't eat enough, I keep telling her. My eyes burned. A tear slipped down my temple, sliding into my hair. I didn't blink. Not once. Not twice. The doctor pulled back slowly, her face carefully professional again. I understand, she said, but the weight in those 2 words told me she really did. We're going to run some tests, make sure there's no internal bleeding. You'll be here a few hours. Marcus pushed back through the curtain before she finished speaking, his face arranged in concern. How is she? Is she going to be okay? She'll be fine, the doctor said, not looking at him. Just needs rest. He moved to my side again, his hand covering mine. To everyone else, it looked like comfort. I felt the pressure of his fingers and knew exactly what he was saying. Good girl. You chose right. Now we both go home. And you remember, this is what happens when you make me angry. Next time, you might not wake up. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles that wouldn't stop spinning, I realized something that made my blood run cold. He was right. Next time, I might not wake up. Unless I did something about it first. The smell of hospital disinfectant always takes me back to a different kind of sterile room, the college library, where I used to study until 2 in the morning, waiting for Marcus to finish his shift at the campus bar so I could drive him home. That was 15 years ago. I was 23, working the breakfast shift at a diner in Queens, and the dinner shift at a bookstore in Manhattan, catching the subway between jobs with my uniform still smelling like bacon grease and coffee. Marcus was in his final year of business school, drowning in student loans and big dreams about the life we'd build together. Just get me through this year, Em, he'd say, his head in my lap while I ran my fingers through his hair. Once I graduate, once I get that job, I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of you. So I did. I took care of everything. I paid his tuition when his loans fell through. Picked up a weekend shift cleaning offices in Midtown just to cover it. I remember my hands cracking from the industrial soap, bleeding around the knuckles in winter. I'd hide them in my pockets when we went out because Marcus hated when I looked rough, said it reflected poorly on him. I should have seen it then. That small comment, that tiny seed. When his mother got sick, lung cancer, stage 3, I was the one who sat with her through chemo. Marcus would visit for 20 minutes, kiss her forehead, then disappear to take a work call, but I stayed. Held the basin when she got sick, rubbed her feet when the neuropathy got bad, learned to cook her Polish recipes so she could taste home one more time. She died holding my hand, not his. Her last words were "Dziękuję, thank you." I still hear it sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. Marcus cried at the funeral, real tears that time, I think. And for a few months after, he was gentle again, the man I'd fallen in love with. The one who used to leave little notes in my coat pockets. Who'd dance with me in our cramped studio apartment with no music playing. Then I got pregnant. Sophie was born on a Tuesday in March, during a snowstorm that shut down half the city. Marcus missed it, stuck in a meeting he said couldn't be rescheduled. I labored for 14 hours with just a nurse named Patricia, who held my hand and told me I was doing great, that I was strong, that my baby was lucky to have me. I wanted to believe her. For the first 2 years, I raised Sophie alone, while Marcus worked late. That's what he always said, working late, building his career, networking. I'd text him photos of Sophie's first steps, her first words, her first everything, and he'd respond hours later with a thumbs up emoji. But I told myself it was temporary, that he was providing for us, that his distance was sacrifice, not indifference. I became an expert at making excuses. When he started coming home angry, slamming doors, I told myself he was stressed. When he criticized everything, my cooking, my hair, the way I laughed too loud, I told myself he was tired. When he shoved me for the first time hard enough that I hit the counter and bruised my hip, I told myself it was an accident. You make me so frustrated sometimes, Em, he said after, his voice breaking. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. It won't happen again. It happened again. And again. And I started wearing sweaters in summer to cover the fingerprint bruises on my arms. Started telling Sophie that Mommy was clumsy when she asked about the mark on my face. Started scheduling my life around his moods, reading his expressions like a meteorologist tracking storms. I worked from home doing medical billing, making just enough to cover groceries and Sophie's preschool, while Marcus's salary paid for everything else: the mortgage, the car, the life insurance policy with my name on it. I had no accounts of my own, no savings, no exit. The saddest part wasn't the pain. I learned to manage pain. You'd be surprised what a human body can endure, what a human heart can normalize. The saddest part was realizing I had become invisible in my own marriage. I was the woman who made his coffee every morning, exactly the way he liked it, who ironed his shirts, who smiled at his colleagues at company dinners and laughed at jokes that weren't funny, who stayed silent when he flirted with the new hire because making a scene would embarrass him. I disappeared myself, piece by piece, year by year, until I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. You'll know what it feels like to love someone so much you forget to love yourself. To sacrifice so completely, you don't notice you're the one being sacrificed. But lying in that hospital bed, feeling Marcus's fingers digging into my hand while he played the devoted husband for an audience of strangers, something shifted. A crack in the foundation of my fear. Because I suddenly understood, the most dangerous thing in my life wasn't Marcus's fists. It was my own silence. I found out the truth 3 weeks before I ended up in that hospital bed. It was a Thursday night. Sophie was asleep. Marcus was in his office, our office technically, though I hadn't been allowed in there for months. He'd installed a lock, said he needed privacy for sensitive work calls. I was folding laundry in the hallway when I heard his voice through the door, low and careful. The tone he used when he thought no one was listening. Once everything's in my name, I won't need her anymore. My hand stopped mid-fold. A sock dropped to the floor. No, listen, she signed the papers already. She doesn't even read half the shit I put in front of her. He laughed. Actually laughed. The house refinance, the insurance policy, the credit line, all of it. By the time she figures it out, she'll have nothing. The world tilted sideways. I pressed my back against the wall, the laundry basket sliding from my hip, spilling clean clothes across the hardwood. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought he'd hear it through the door. My lawyer says as long as I document her instability, which, let's be honest, isn't hard, I'll get full custody too. Who's gonna give a kid to a woman who can't even keep her shit together? The woman who can't keep her shit together. He was talking about me. The woman who'd raised our daughter alone, who worked from home so I'd always be there when Sophie got off the bus, who'd sacrificed every dream, every friendship, every piece of myself to hold this family together while he systematically destroyed it. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. At 4 a.m, while Marcus snored in our bed, I went into his office. The door was unlocked careless, or maybe he'd just stopped caring if I knew. The files were right there on his desk, not even hidden. Insurance papers with my signature, except it wasn't quite right, the E too narrow, the A too round. He'd practiced, but not enough. A house deed transfer application, pending approval. Credit card statements for accounts I'd never opened, maxed out at $23,000 under my name. And a folder labeled Amelia, mental health documentation. My hand shook as I opened it. Pages and pages of his handwritten notes, dates, times, descriptions of my erratic behavior, how I'd become increasingly unstable, how I'd threatened self-harm on multiple occasions, how he was deeply concerned for our daughter's safety. Every word was a lie. Meticulous, calculated, documented lies. There were emails to his mother, his sister, his boss, a narrative he'd been building for months, maybe years, painting me as unhinged, depressive, dangerous. Setting the stage for the day he'd need them to believe him over me. And they would. Of course they would. Because who was I? The quiet wife. The one who never made waves. The one who smiled through every family dinner while his mother criticized my cooking and his sister made comments about my weight. I'd been so invisible, he'd been able to erase me without anyone noticing. The documents blurred as tears filled my eyes. I wanted to scream, to tear them all to pieces. To wake him up and demand an explanation I knew would never come, or worse, would come wrapped in more lies, more gaslighting, more ways to make me doubt my own reality. Instead, I took photos of everything, every page, every signature, every receipt, my hands barely steady enough to hold the phone. I don't know what I planned to do with them. Just knew I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that this was real. The next 3 weeks were a nightmare dressed up as normal life. I made breakfast, packed lunches, smiled at Sophie. Went through the motions while Marcus watched me with something new in his eyes. Impatience maybe. Like I was taking too long to break. He started pushing harder, coming home angry about nothing. Accusing me of cheating with the mailman, the grocery store clerk, my own cousin. Creating chaos out of thin air, so he'd have more incidents to document. I stopped responding. Stopped defending myself. Just went quiet. And that made him furious. "You think you're better than me?" he screamed one night, his face inches from mine. Sophie was at a sleepover he'd planned that, I realized later. Made sure we were alone. "You think your silence makes you righteous? You're nothing, Amelia. You hear me? Nothing." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Had he always been this person, or had I just refused to see it? "I know what you're doing," I said quietly. "The papers, the forgeries, all of it." His face went still. Then he smiled. "Prove it." That's when he hit me. Not a shove. Not an accident. A closed fist to the side of my head that sent me sprawling into the kitchen counter. My skull cracked against the granite edge and everything went white, then red, then black. When I woke up, I was in the ambulance. Marcus was crying beside me, holding my hand. "Stay with me, baby," he whispered. "Please stay with me." And I understood. He needed me alive just long enough to finish transferring everything. Then I could disappear. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. You're not crazy. And you're not nothing. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way, even when it has to crawl through hell to get there. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. 3 days of fluorescent lights that never turned off. 3 days of nurses checking vitals every 4 hours, their faces carefully neutral when they saw the bruises blooming across my ribs, my arms, the side of my face that had gone purple and yellow like a sunset I didn't want to see. Marcus never left. That's what everyone said. What a devoted husband. What a caring man. He brought flowers on day 2, white roses, my least favorite, but he'd never bothered to learn that. He arranged them on the windowsill himself, making sure they were visible from the hallway where nurses passed by. He posted a photo on Facebook, a selfie of him looking exhausted but brave, the hospital room blurred in the background. The caption read, "Pray for my wife. I'm staying by her side. She's everything to me." 300 likes in an hour. His mother commented, "You're such a good man, Marcus. Amelia is so lucky to have you." I stared at that comment until the screen went blurry. Lucky. My jaw ached when I tried to open my mouth. The doctor said it wasn't broken, just badly bruised. I could talk if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. What was there to say? Every word felt like it would cost me something I didn't have left to give. So I stayed quiet. Marcus filled the silence for both of us. He talked to doctors about my history of dizziness. He explained to the social worker that I'd been under a lot of stress lately and not sleeping well. He touched my hand gently whenever someone was watching, his thumb stroking my knuckles like he'd done when we were dating, back when that touch meant love instead of ownership. The social worker came on day 2. A tired-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a clipboard. She pulled the curtain around my bed and sat down in the visitor's chair. "Amelia," she said softly, "I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay?" I nodded. "The pattern of your injuries, the doctor has some concerns. She wanted me to check in with you." She paused. "Are you safe at home?" The question hung in the air between us. So simple, so impossible. I opened my mouth, closed it. My ribs ached with every breath. Behind the curtain, I could hear Marcus's voice in the hallway, laughing with a nurse about something. Charming, easy. The man everyone loved. "I'm fine," I whispered. The social worker's eyes searched my face. "Amelia." The curtain pulled back. Marcus stood there with 2 coffees, his smile warm and concerned. "Sorry, am I interrupting?" "I brought you decaf, honey." He handed me a cup I wouldn't drink. Looked at the social worker. "Is everything okay?" "Just routine questions, Mr. Miller." Of course. Whatever you need." He sat down on the edge of my bed, his weight making the mattress dip. His hand found mine again, squeezed gently. "We just want to make sure she's okay. Don't we, Em?" I nodded. The social worker asked a few more questions, perfunctory now, the moment already lost. Marcus answered most of them. When she left, he kissed my forehead. "Good girl," he whispered, so quiet only I could hear. At night, when the hospital settled into that strange half-silence of beeping monitors and distant conversations, I lay awake counting ceiling tiles. There were 42 visible from my bed. I counted them over and over until the numbers stopped meaning anything. Marcus slept in the recliner beside me, snoring softly. His phone was on the side table, screen dark. I wondered what would happen if I grabbed it, if I called someone. But who? His family thought I was unstable. My own parents had passed years ago. My friends, the few I'd had drifted away over the years, tired of my excuses for why I couldn't meet for coffee, couldn't come to birthday parties, couldn't ever just be present. I'd isolated myself so completely that when I finally needed help, there was no one left to call. The silence in that room was so thick I could taste it. Not peaceful, suffocating. I'm alive, I thought, watching the rhythm of Marcus's breathing. But I've never felt more alone. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence. The kind that doesn't comfort, it accuses. It asks questions you don't want to answer. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. On the third day, they discharged me. Marcus wheeled me out in a wheelchair I didn't need, one arm around my shoulders for the cameras because he'd made sure people were watching, made sure his performance was documented. In the car, he didn't speak until we were on the highway. "You did good back there," he said, eyes on the road. "Keep doing good, and maybe things will get easier." I looked out the window at the city passing by, people walking dogs, couples holding hands, life continuing like nothing had changed. But something had changed. Somewhere in that hospital room, in that suffocating silence, in the space between my heartbeats, I'd stopped waiting to be saved. Because no one was coming. If I wanted out, I'd have to save myself. The truth started with a nurse I'd never seen before. She came in on my second night, during the shift change when Marcus had stepped out to grab dinner. Young, maybe late 20s, with her hair pulled back tight and tired eyes that had seen too much. She didn't say anything at first. Just checked my vitals, made notes on her tablet. Then she paused at the foot of my bed. "I documented everything," she said quietly. "Every bruise, every mark, the pattern of injuries. It's in your chart now." She looked at me directly. "Sometimes people need proof later." So I made sure there was proof. Before I could respond, she was gone. The next morning, Dr. Chen, the gray-haired doctor from my first night, ordered a full body scan. "Standard protocol for head injuries," she told Marcus, who was hovering in the doorway with his concerned husband face. But when the results came back, she pulled me aside alone. "Emilia, these scans show 3 healed rib fractures, a hairline fracture in your left wrist that never set properly, significant old bruising in your kidneys." Her voice was steady, clinical. "None of this is in your medical history, which means you never reported it." I stared at the films on the light box. My own skeleton, a map of violence I'd learned to ignore. "I fell a lot," I whispered. "No one falls this consistently in the same places." She touched my arm gently. "I'm required to report this." That afternoon, a security guard knocked on my door. Older guy, ex-military by the look of him, with kind eyes and a Brooklyn accent. "Mrs. Miller? I need to tell you something." He glanced toward the hallway where Marcus was talking on his phone. "Your husband tried to access your medical chart this morning, from the nurse's station computer, said he had your permission." My blood went cold. "Did he?" "No. System flagged it. He doesn't have authorization." He lowered his voice. "I've worked here 15 years. I've seen this pattern before. You should know he also asked about early discharge protocols. Private home care. How soon you could leave." The pieces clicked together like a lock turning. He wanted me home, away from witnesses, away from doctors who asked questions. The social worker returned that evening. This time, she closed the door. "Emilia, I need you to listen carefully." She sat down, her clipboard forgotten in her lap. "Your husband called the discharge office this morning requesting early release for private care at home. He was very insistent, very charming." My hand started shaking. "But here's what he doesn't know. Your scans triggered an automatic review. The pattern of your injuries, old and new, meets the clinical criteria for intimate partner violence. We've contacted the district attorney's office. They're opening an investigation." The room tilted. You don't have to do anything right now, she continued. You don't have to press charges, you don't have to leave, but you should know, you're not alone anymore. There are people who see what's happening. And there's a record now. A real one. Not the story he's been telling. For the first time in 3 days, I felt something other than numbness. I felt the tiniest spark of something that might have been hope. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. Not relief exactly, but the first breath after drowning. Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people still finding their voice after betrayal. That night, when Marcus fell asleep in the chair beside my bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought about that nurse who'd documented everything. The doctor who'd ordered scans. The security guard who'd warned me. The social worker who'd believed me without needing me to say a word. They'd seen what I couldn't say. And now, finally, I could see it too. I may have been blind for years, but now I could see everything clearer than ever, including the way out. There comes a point when silence stops, meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. I discovered this on my 4th day in the hospital, sitting in that terrible fluorescent light with my ribs aching and my mind finally brutally clear. The social worker, her name was Patricia, I learned came back with forms. Not the perfunctory ones from before, real ones, legal ones. These are voluntary, she said, spreading them across the rolling table by my bed. But if you're ready, we can start building a case. Not for him, for you. Protection, documentation, options. Marcus was downstairs in the cafeteria. I had maybe 20 minutes. What do I need to do? My voice came out steadier than I expected. Tell the truth, all of it. Write it down while it's fresh. She handed me a pen. Every incident you remember. Dates if you have them. Witnesses if there were any. Evidence if it exists. I started writing. My hand moved across the page like it had been waiting for permission. 3 years ago he pushed me into the bookshelf. 2 years ago he grabbed my throat during an argument about money. Last year, he threw a glass that shattered against the wall near my head. 6 months ago he twisted my wrist until I heard it crack. I wrote for an hour. Then another. Patricia brought me more pages. When Marcus returned with coffee and his perfect, concerned husband's smile, the forms were already locked in Patricia's briefcase. My statement was already on file. The photos of my injuries, close-ups, clinical, undeniable, were already uploaded to a secure database. He had no idea. How are you feeling, honey? He kissed my forehead. The gesture made my skin crawl. Tired, I said, which was true. The doctor says you might be able to go home tomorrow. He squeezed my hand. Won't that be nice? Back in our own bed? I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. Not fear, not love, not even anger anymore. Just a cold, clear understanding of exactly who he was. That would be nice, I said. Over the next 2 days, I cooperated with everyone Marcus didn't know existed. I gave written consent for the hospital to share my records with law enforcement. I authorized the detective who quietly interviewed me to access our financial statements. I signed paperwork for a restraining order that wouldn't be filed until I was safely out of his reach. Each signature felt like cutting a chain. For years, I'd mistaken his control for love, his jealousy for passion, his violence for stress. I'd made myself small enough to fit inside his version of our marriage. Now, I was learning the quiet mathematics of self-respect. And the numbers didn't lie. On my last morning in the hospital, Detective Rivera came by. Plain clothes, 40s, wedding ring, kind face. She sat where Marcus usually sat and spoke in a low voice. We've been building something, she said. Financial fraud. Forgery. Identity theft. And now, with your statement and the medical documentation, assault. Domestic violence with a pattern of escalation. She paused. When you're ready to leave, we can arrange a police escort. We can take you somewhere safe. Or, if you prefer, we can have officers present when you return home to collect your things. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. I want to go home first, I said, just to get Sophie, and some documents he doesn't know I have. She nodded. We'll be right outside. You won't be alone. That afternoon, Marcus burst into my room with roses. Red this time. Dramatic. He must have sensed something shifting, some change in the air he couldn't quite name. Ready to go home, baby? His smile was wide, eager. I've got the car downstairs. I'll take such good care of you. I looked at him with an empty face. calm, still. The silence before a storm he never saw coming. "I'm ready," I said. In the car, he talked the whole way about how good it would be to have me home, how he'd take time off work to help me recover, how we'd get through this together like we always did. I watched the city pass by the window, counted blocks, breathed slowly. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Patricia. "Police are in position. You're safe." Another from my new lawyer, a family law attorney Patricia had connected me with. Appointment confirmed for Monday 9 a.m. Restraining order paperwork ready to file. And one more, from a number I didn't recognize but somehow knew. "This is the nurse from your second night. I'm available to testify if needed. You're not alone." It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. Marcus pulled into our driveway, still talking, still performing concern. He didn't notice the unmarked car parked 3 houses down, didn't see the detective watching from across the street. He helped me out of the car with exaggerated gentleness, his hand on my elbow. "Home sweet home," he said. I looked at our house, the place where I'd been broken down piece by piece, year by year, and felt something I hadn't felt in over a decade. Control. For the first time, I didn't need him to hear me. My silence had already spoken. And tomorrow, so would everything else. The moment came 3 days after I got home. Not in a courtroom, not in some dramatic police station interrogation room, in our living room, with Sophie at school, with 2 detectives standing by the door, with Marcus realizing, too late, that the woman he'd been hitting for years had finally stopped flinching. He'd just walked in from work, loosening his tie, when he saw them. Detective Rivera and her partner, sitting on our couch like they'd been invited for coffee. "What the hell is this?" His voice went sharp, dangerous. The voice I knew meant violence was coming. But I wasn't alone anymore. "Mr. Miller," Detective Rivera stood slowly, "we need to ask you some questions about your wife's hospitalization last week." "She fell. I already told everyone at the hospital. We have a different account." Rivera's voice was calm, professional, "from your wife, from medical staff, from hospital security footage showing you attempting unauthorized access to her medical records." I watched his face change. Confusion, then calculation, then that smile, the one he used to charm his way out of everything. "This is ridiculous. Amelia, tell them." He turned to me, his eyes warning me to stay quiet, to play along, to protect him like I always had. I looked at him and said nothing. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "We also have questions about financial documents," Rivera continued. "Specifically, forged signatures on property transfers, insurance policies, and a credit line opened in your wife's name without her knowledge." Marcus's smile flickered. "That she signed those. She's confused. She's been under stress." "I have the originals," I said quietly, my first words since they'd arrived. "The ones you forged. I photographed everything before you could destroy them." His head whipped toward me. For a second, I saw genuine shock in his eyes, then rage, pure and undisguised. "You went through my office? You had no right?" "It's my house too, Marcus. My name is on the deed. The real deed, not the fraudulent transfer you tried to file." Detective Rivera pulled out her phone, scrolled, turned the screen toward Marcus. "Hospital security footage. Time-stamped. Shows you at the nurse's station, attempting to access restricted files. Then calling the discharge office inquiring about early release protocols." She swiped. "Your phone records show 17 calls to your attorney discussing asset protection and documentation of mental instability." I watched him try to calibrate his response. Watched him search for the right words, the right tone, the performance that would save him. "I was trying to help her," he said, his voice cracking with false emotion. "She's been unstable, paranoid. I was protecting our family. By hitting her hard enough to fracture 3 ribs?" Rivera's voice cut through his act like a scalpel. "By causing a concussion severe enough to require hospitalization? By creating a pattern of documented injuries spanning 3 years? The room went still. Marcus's face drained of color. "She's lying. She's always been clumsy, everyone knows." "The medical examiner reviewed her scans," Rivera interrupted. "The injury patterns are consistent with intimate partner violence, multiple healed fractures, defensive wounds, bruising that matches closed-fist impacts, not falls." I stood up slowly, every eye in the room turned to me. "For 12 years, I said, my voice steady, I believed you when you said you loved me. I believed you when you said the hitting was my fault. I believed you when you said no one would believe me if I told. I took a breath. The air tasted different now, cleaner. But the thing about truth, Marcus, it doesn't need anyone to believe it. It just needs to exist. His jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. Rivera stepped between us, her partner moving to her side. Marcus Miller, you're under arrest for aggravated assault, domestic violence, fraud, attempted identity theft, and forgery. You can't, she's my wife, she belongs to me. His voice exploded through the room, all pretense gone now, just raw ownership and rage. The partner moved fast, pulling Marcus's arms behind his back. The handcuffs clicked into place with a sound that echoed like thunder. Marcus thrashed, shouting my name, screaming that I'd regret this, that I was nothing without him, that I'd never survive alone. I watched him, didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't move. For the first time in years, I just breathed. They let him out still screaming. Through our front door, down our driveway, into the back of an unmarked car. Neighbors stood on their lawns watching the same neighbors who'd heard me scream through the walls and done nothing, who'd seen my bruises and looked away. Now they saw him, really saw him. Detective Rivera stayed behind for a moment. You did good, she said quietly. A lot of women don't make it this far. I nodded. Couldn't speak yet. My throat was too tight. When she left, I stood alone in the living room. Our living room. Soon to be just mine. The house was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. And for the first time in over a decade, that silence didn't terrify me. It sounded like freedom. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. It was the sound of justice finally breathing. Marcus was denied bail. The judge cited flight risk and documented evidence of witness intimidation texts he'd sent to his mother and sister, coaching them on what to say if anyone asked questions. Messages telling them I was unstable, that I needed to be committed, that I was destroying the family. Those same messages became evidence. The people he'd tried to manipulate became witnesses for the prosecution. His accounts were frozen pending the fraud investigation. Every forged signature, every unauthorized transfer, every dollar he'd stolen in my name, all of it traced, documented, undeniable. The forensic accountant told me he'd been building this scheme for almost 2 years, planning my erasure like it was a business strategy. His employer, a prestigious consulting firm in Midtown that prided itself on integrity and excellence, suspended him within 48 hours of his arrest. By the end of the week, they'd quietly let him go. Can't have a domestic abuser representing the company at client meetings. Bad for the brand. His mother called me once. Just once. You destroyed my son, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I held the phone, watching rain streak down my kitchen window. No, I said quietly. He destroyed himself. I just stopped helping him hide it. She hung up. I never heard from her again. His sister, the one who'd always smiled at me with pity in her eyes, who'd told me more than once that I was lucky to have Marcus posted something on Facebook. A long, rambling statement about family loyalty and innocent until proven guilty and the justice system failing good men. Within hours, her comments were flooded. Women she'd gone to high school with, colleagues from her job, people who'd seen the police report, the medical documentation, the trail of lies Marcus had left behind. She deleted the post by morning. Made her profile private. Stopped talking about her brother entirely. I didn't gloat, didn't comment, didn't even read most of it. I just watched the truth do what truth does when it's finally allowed to speak. 3 weeks after Marcus's arrest, I got a call from a women's shelter in Brooklyn. They had a bed available if I wanted it, a safe space while I figured out next steps. The house was still technically mine and Marcus's, tangled up in legal proceedings. I could stay, but the lawyer advised against it. Too many memories, she said. You need somewhere you can breathe. So I went. Packed 2 suitcases, took Sophie, and moved into a small room with clean sheets and a door that locked from the inside. A door only I had the key to. That first night, I slept 10 hours straight. No nightmares. No waking up at every sound. Just sleep. Deep. And dreamless. My sister Rachel drove in from Pennsylvania the next day. We hadn't spoken in almost 3 years, one of the many relationships Marcus had systematically destroyed, convincing me she was jealous of our marriage, that she didn't understand us. She walked into the shelter common room, saw me, and burst into tears. I should have come sooner, she sobbed, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. I should have known. I should have. You're here now, I whispered. That's what matters. We sat in the courtyard for hours, catching up on lost time. She told me about her kids, her job, her divorce 2 years ago. I told her everything. Every bruise, every lie, every moment I'd wanted to call her but convinced myself I couldn't. He made me think I was crazy, I said, like my reality wasn't real. That's what they do, Rachel said quietly. They make you doubt everything, even yourself, especially yourself. I started therapy the following week. A woman named Dr. Reyes who specialized in trauma recovery. She didn't ask me to forgive Marcus, didn't push me to move on or let it go. She just helped me understand that what happened to me had a name, had a pattern, had nothing to do with my worth as a human being. You survived, she said during our third session. That's not a small thing. Meanwhile, Marcus's world continued to collapse in ways I only heard about secondhand. His lawyer dropped him after he couldn't pay the retainer. The corporate apartment he'd been so proud of, the one he'd insisted we couldn't afford to leave, was foreclosed on when the mortgage payments stopped. Turns out he'd been leveraging everything, living on credit and stolen money, building a house of cards that was always going to fall. People whispered. Former friends, colleagues, neighbors who'd thought he was so charming, so successful. Did you hear about Marcus Miller? I always knew something was off about him. Poor Amelia. I can't believe what she went through. I didn't need their pity. Didn't need their retroactive validation. I just needed them to finally see what I'd been living with all along. One afternoon I ran into his old business partner at a coffee shop in Park Slope. He recognized me, started to walk over, then stopped. Our eyes met across the room. He looked away first, ashamed maybe, or just uncomfortable with the truth. I finished my coffee, left a tip, and walked out into the autumn sunlight. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. And for the first time in over a decade, I was finally free to write my own story. Without him in it. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. 6 months after Marcus's arrest, I sat in a courtroom in Lower Manhattan, hands folded in my lap, watching the judge review the final sentencing documents. The room smelled like old wood and recycled air. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. It was nothing like the dramatic courtroom scenes you see on TV, just tired lawyers, bored bailiffs, and the slow machinery of justice grinding forward. Marcus sat 30 feet away, his back to me. He'd lost weight. His suit didn't fit right anymore. When they'd brought him in, he'd tried to catch my eye, but I'd looked past him, through him, like he was already a memory. The prosecutor called me to the stand for my victim impact statement. I walked up slowly, took the oath, sat down. The microphone amplified my breathing. Your Honor, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. For 12 years I believed that love meant enduring. That marriage meant sacrifice, that if I just tried harder, gave more, stayed quieter, he would stop hurting me. I paused, looked at the judge, not at Marcus. I was wrong. What I experienced wasn't love. It was control disguised as devotion, violence disguised as passion, theft disguised as partnership. I took a breath. Marcus didn't just hit me. He tried to erase me financially, legally, emotionally. He documented my instability while causing it. He forged my signature while convincing me I was losing my mind. My hands gripped the edges of the witness stand. But here's what he didn't understand. You can't destroy someone who finally learns their own worth. Justice isn't about watching him fall. It's about me standing again without hate, without fear, without needing his permission to exist. The courtroom was silent. I don't want revenge, Your Honor. I want safety. For me, for my daughter, and for every other woman who thinks she's alone in this. Thank you. I stepped down. Didn't look at Marcus. Didn't need to. The judge sentenced him to 7 years for assault, fraud, and identity theft. Mandatory anger management and rehabilitation. A permanent restraining order. Supervised visitation with Sophie only after completion of a parenting program. When the gavel fell, I felt nothing dramatic, no surge of triumph, no tears of relief. Just a quiet sense of completion. Like closing a book I'd been forced to read for too long. I walked out of that courtroom into October sunlight, the kind that's soft and golden, the city somehow gentler in the afternoon light. Rachel was waiting on the courthouse steps with Sophie, who ran to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Is it over, Mom? She asked, her voice small. Yeah, baby. I said, stroking her hair. It's over. That night, alone in the small apartment I'd rented in Prospect Heights, 1 bedroom, decent light, a kitchen that was mine, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd found. I used to believe love meant giving everything. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. I started a support group 3 months later. Just a small thing, meeting twice a month in the basement of a community center in Brooklyn. 6 women at first, then 12, then 20. Women with stories like mine. Women who'd been told they were crazy, worthless, lucky to be loved at all. We didn't fix each other, we just witnessed each other, held space, reminded one another that survival isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing you can do. One woman, Maria, told me after our 4th meeting, "You gave me permission to leave, just by existing, by being proof that there's life after." I thought about that a lot. How my scars had become something useful. Not beautiful, not inspiring in some Instagram quote kind of way, just real. Just proof that you can walk through hell and come out human on the other side. Justice didn't make me bitter, it made me free. Free to build a life that wasn't defined by someone else's anger. Free to love my daughter without teaching her that tolerance of abuse is loyalty. Free to be ordinary gloriously, peacefully ordinary. Some storms don't come to destroy you. They come to wash away the people who were never meant to stay. I thought about Marcus sometimes, locked away in a cell upstate. Wondered if he'd learned anything, if he felt regret, if he understood what he'd done. Then I'd let the thoughts pass, like clouds. His journey wasn't mine anymore. Mine was here, in this small apartment with secondhand furniture and a view of the park, in Sophie's laughter when we made pancakes on Sunday mornings, in therapy sessions where I was learning to trust again, not others first, but myself, in the quiet knowledge that I'd survived the worst thing I could imagine, and I was still here, still breathing, still becoming. If my story teaches anything, it's this. Kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. And you don't owe anyone your destruction. One evening, I stood on my fire escape watching the sunset paint Brooklyn in shades of amber and rose. The city hummed below, sirens, music, voices blending into the symphony of millions of lives being lived. I laughed. Not because I was happy, not yet, not completely, but because I was peaceful. Justice gave me back my name. But peace gave me back myself. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in what you could provide, I hope my story reminds you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive, stories where justice doesn't shout, it heals.